season. I loved the whole show, and I love what I was able to see from this season. So one of the things that I really wanted to know was, we know from the previous season that Miss Judge had a baby. And so I was wondering, how does this kind of shape or even reshape what we're going to see in the season coming up?
So Lola, at the end of season 2, her husband committed to taking a step back from the FBI and committed to being there for her, to help her as she was going into her election and to be there for her and Bailey. And so that's what we get to see. We get to come home with Lola a lot more and watch her try to manage being a mom and going back to work full time. But also, we get to see her husband at home, which is nice. You know, Robin spent a lot of time in DC. This season, we have the gift of Christian Keys, who will be stepping into the role as Robin. And so we get to have a lot of fun this season, seeing Lola being the working wife and him being the stay-at-home dad.
Well, and one of the things that I kind of loved a little bit that I was able to see this season was the home life, and just Lola being with her husband and just being normal and natural. Will we get to see a lot more of that, her balance between home life and work life?
100%, we will get to see a lot more of Lola at home and trying to balance things. And sometimes her personal life is bleeding into the courtroom, which is interesting. Also, Lola gets a little messy this season. Her personal life gets a little complicated, and that affects her professionally and personally, her friendships, as well as her marriage. And so I'm excited for the fans to see that this season and to see, will Robin and Lola survive?
Wondering, as a new mom, will she kind of look at her cases a little bit differently? Will that heart kind of change a little bit?
I think that at the beginning of season 2, when we opened up the season, Lola was stepping in front of a gun to protect a little Black girl. And that same day was the day that she knew she was going to become a mom. And that then shifted her perspective with everything, every case. And so we will continue to see that this season, but the cases that are coming in front of Lola's courtroom this season definitely deal a lot with things that we are seeing play out in the media. Very public cases of sexual assault by athletes and their accusers. We're seeing also cases that deal with serial killers that are attacking women, Black women in and around LA. And so a lot of what Lola is dealing with personally, being in her position as a judge, isn't necessarily in the same way touching her personal life. But I think all of these things, as a woman and as an Angelino, and as a Black woman especially, these things are affecting her.
Any kind of case that you really liked that they brought into the show? 'Cause I know there's a lot of ripped from the headline moments. We had the whole Black Lives Matter experience, which it felt like it was right there, right now in the moment.
So this season, we have a man who has potentially been falsely accused of murder and has spent the last 20 plus years in prison. And the opportunity for him to potentially be released happens in Lola's courtroom. She's put in a precarious position because the judge who originally handed down that verdict is now her potential boss. And so you get to see her try to figure out how to walk that fine line of making sure that justice is served, but also looking at the facts in front of her and not just letting her heart lead. But I think what's important is there are so many people who are in prison today who don't deserve to be. And that is a conversation that I don't think we're having enough about. We read these headlines about people who have been exonerated, people who were on death row, people who were, given a stay of execution, and it's uncertain as to whether or not they actually committed the crime, or even as a person reading the newspaper, it's clear that they are not the person who committed the crime, and yet they have been wasting away in prison for the better part of a lifetime. And so I think that All Rise tackling cases like that this season will hopefully, again, continue to be reflective of the changes that we need to see in our criminal justice system, because there needs to be major sweeping changes in the way that the system works.
What I also love about this whole show is the friendships that the characters have with each other. And so we're getting a new cast of characters. Can you talk a little bit about whether that reshapes kind of the friendships that we've seen previously?
So this season, thankfully, we have almost all of our cast returning, all of our core cast. But as you mentioned, there are some shifts, and the season's theme is new beginnings. And so you see Sarah no longer the court reporter in 802. She's now working in the DA's office. You see Luke no longer working in the DA's office. He's in the PD's office. And so he's going up against Mark, who they have become, we say they have a bromance. They are now on opposite sides of the line and of the table. And so there are a lot of little shifts in that way. Benner is no longer Lola's direct supervisor. She's switching and moving into a different place. And so their relationship, their friendship is still there, but she has to go to Benner for advice as a friend now. But she's not just right down the hall. And so there are subtle shifts and changes, but it allows for new relationships to grow and to be deeper still, which is exciting. And I think a lot of the ways in which we play with these different dynamics bring so much levity and humor to the show this season.
You had the election campaign from the previous season, and we kind of go into that with this season. Is there new elements that are, without any kind of spoilers, or are there any kind of new elements or surprises that ends up happening from the campaign that ends up traveling into the results?
Yes, there definitely are some surprises and some changes. Lola thinks that she wins clean, and it gets a little dirty. And you have to see whether or not that is going to affect her position. Is she going to be able to keep her judgeship? And so, what we love to do on this show is plant seeds and then watch those poisonous trees then grow a couple episodes down the line. And so the election is not just over and done with by any means.
Okay, I like that nice teaser. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I truly love the series. I'm so happy it's back. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. I appreciate you, David.